A slender row of glistening stars hung just outside the USS's viewports. Their light was constantly warped by the Tsar's swirling clouds of blue and black. The human fleet had been in the atmosphere of Tsar 99 for hours, merely observing and waiting for the Vara to recognize their presence. They were not prepared for a friendly reception. Commander Elias ROR sat in his command chair, hands clasped behind his back, his gaze sweeping the quiet bridge. He had participated in too many tense first contact missions, but this one, the Vara, had a different weight to it. A clandestine and combative race, the Vara had long disregarded humans as ancient legends, tales passed down among their leaders as warnings of a dangerous foe. The myth of humanity had persisted until now. The fleet was here, and ROR was its commander. The voice of Lieutenant Jessica Jess Cordova broke through the silence, anchoring ROR back to the present. Commander? He turned to face the fleet. Display. Each capital ship loomed on the visual screen, armed with enough firepower to level the biggest city on the planet. They were here for one reason: to demonstrate to the Vara that myths had a way of coming to life. Send the diplomatic message again, ROR said, his voice calm. But beneath that calm was an unshakable tension. If the Vara posed a threat, he would not hesitate to turn this into a battle. A flicker. The screen changed. The Vara transmission began. Their language was foreign, yet the tone was unmistakable. Contempt. The Vara Council, their governing body, had replied only once, just enough to demonstrate their arrogance. The tales the ancients told have been tested. There is no such species as humanity. The words were dismissive, laced with doubt. ROR knew that ambiguity would soon shift. When they saw the human fleet up close, doubt would turn to terror. Nothing has changed, sir, Jess said. A faint hum came through the speakers, masking the annoyance in her voice. ROR exhaled. They'll respond when they're ready, he said, but every passing moment brought them closer to a war they weren't prepared for. Admiral Vaxer stood in the council chamber, overlooking the human fleet from a vast platform on the Tsar 99 Capitol balcony. Below him, a sprawling metropolis stretched in perfect symmetry, towering crystalline spires reflecting the red and orange hues of a fading sun. His people's hive. City was a masterpiece of structured chaos, but Vaxer wasn't thinking about his home. He was watching the humans. Mythical invaders, he muttered, his voice dripping with mockery. Beside him, Ambassador Kor, the Tsar Council's diplomatic representative, stood rigidly. His angular features were a stark contrast to the smooth curves of the Vara soldiers. Kor studied the hologram fleet once more, narrowing his eyes. Sir, he began cautiously, is there not something strange about their communications? They insist on meeting with us as equals rather than adversaries. Vaxer sneered. If they are humans at all, he said, they are merely a story. We have faced the Scytha, the Zerks, and countless other threats. The humans are nothing. Kor hesitated. Admiral, we should act cautiously. Vaxer cut him off. We shall meet with them, but on our terms. Back aboard the Unwavering, Commander ROR stood before the massive view screen. For the first time in his career, the weight of this negotiation pressed on him. The stakes were not just political, they were galactic. Jess spoke softly from behind him. Sir, their ships are moving. What should we do? The tension in ROR's chest refused to ease. We wait, he said, until they approach us. The view screen flickered once again. This time, the transmission was different. A deep voice echoed through the ship's speakers. This is Admiral Vaxer, of the Vara. You will descend to the Tsar Council's surface immediately. We will discuss your existence before we decide your fate. The transmission cut off abruptly. ROR and Jess exchanged glances. "So much for diplomacy," ROR muttered. "Chart a course for the Citadel," he ordered. The human fleet began its descent. The atmospheric shields flared against the turbulent conditions as they pierced through Tsar 99's thick clouds. Below them, a city unlike any they had seen stretched. Across the land, its obsidian walls rising like a fortress. As the fleet entered visual range, a massive shadow emerged from the horizon. A warship, the Vara flagship, sleek, sharp, razor-edged like a weapon forged in the void. Jess's breath caught. "They're coming," she whispered, and just like that, the battle had already begun. An electric hum filled the air, the concealed sound of unidentified technologies below the city's historic foundations. Each action they took appeared to reverberate throughout the great void, intensifying the stress that pervaded the crew. The gang of Vara caught everyone's attention. Soldiers who stood on either side, their stance almost stiff, frightening in spite of their enormous size and the crystalline weapons they carried. Blades that gave out a slight glow. None of the troops flexed a muscle. They stood like statues, their gaze imposing and quiet, locked in front of everyone. "Stay focused," ROR stated in a stern yet hushed voice. This was no longer merely a diplomatic mission. He could feel Jess's keen gaze on him. She didn't have to speak. He understood her thoughts. She was wondering the same thing he was. The path appeared to go on forever. As they descended, the temperature dropped. Deeper into the Citadel's center, ROR's breath hazed before him, even though there was no visible atmospheric disruption. Every area of this place felt like an old paradox, advanced yet primitive power. When they arrived at the Great Hall, a massive room with lofty vaulted ceilings, the walls were adorned with statues of Jar heroes, each with a war weapon. The ground was polished, smooth obsidian, and at its center stood an elevated dais where Admiral Vaxer waited with his personal guards. Their stern stare remained fixed. Before them stood Vaxer, his long, pointed face embellished with harsh ridges, and Marx, impassive. However, his eyes resembled twin razors, calculating. "Commander ROR Freyer," he stated, his voice resonating through the corridor like a force of nature. ROR maintained his posture. Even as his heartbeat accelerated, he had anticipated the Vara to be haughty. However, the weight of their presence pressed down. This entire culture carried the pressure of history, reminding them that long before humanity had space travel dreams, the Vara had already ruled the stars. "We've arrived regarding terms," ROR stated, his voice unflinching. Jess walked forward, standing slightly behind ROR, attempting to conceal her hesitancy with professionalism. "That's not why we came here," she said. "We're not here to make threats. We're just looking for answers." Vaxer's lips lifted slightly, but there was no humor in the gesture, only contempt. "Answers? You think we should give you answers?" He sneered. "You have entered our domain without permission. No, Commander ROR, you are the one who owes us responses." ROR squinted but said nothing. Freyer was trying to provoke them, to elicit a reaction. It was obvious, but ROR wasn't going to give him the satisfaction. "I believe we're going beyond games," ROR stated coolly. "What do you desire from us, Admiral?" "We have come here to ensure. We weren't merely a footnote in your history books." Vaxer's expression remained calm, but his tone faltered, almost thoughtful. "Do you genuinely believe your species is worthy of being remembered, Commander?" he asked. "You're from a small, backwater world, hardly a footnote on the galactic scale. You haven't even touched the stars, yet you assert that you are capable of opposing us." The tension in the hallway thickened. ROR's heart began to race, but as he steadied himself, he realized something. There was more to this meeting. The Vara had never spoken like this before. Humanity wasn't just another species. They had never encountered one willing to sacrifice everything to survive. "You underestimate us," Roar said slowly. "We have endured more than you believe. We have waged wars that would have wiped out lesser species. But now, that is something you will have to contend with." Vaxer's eyes flickered. He glanced at one of the statues, a relic from a past war, before returning his gaze to ROR, a hint of something unreadable in his expression. "You mention survival," Vaxer said. "But survival is only the first step, Commander. Can you withstand the test that follows?" Before ROR could respond, Kale Torque, a more reflective Vera official, spoke up. "Admiral, we don't need to press them further," Kale said. "We can learn from their existence." Vaxer's gaze hardened. The fundamental divide between them was clear. Kale was a diplomat, preferring discussion, while Freyr favored an iron-fisted approach. "Your past won't teach us anything," Vaxer snapped, losing patience. "Let's cut the charade. Either you demonstrate your worth, or you leave here forgotten." Roar clenched his jaw. The Vara weren't here to negotiate. They were here to test. ROR and humanity both knew the test would be brutal. "What do you suggest?" ROR asked, his voice steady and low. Vaxer smiled. "A straightforward competition," he said. "You will fight. We will see whose will is stronger. Triumph, and your people will be remembered. Fail, and your kind will fade. Into history." ROR stared at the weight of the challenge. This was no longer a diplomatic mission. This was a battle for humanity's future.